All right, here's the latest in my ripping back. I have this lovely water lily wrap that I've been knitting on for a while now, and the lace pattern across in this section is not that regular, and I keep creating mistakes. And I found a serious one actually today. You'll see in these sections here, if you look closely, and I'll zoom in on, I have managed to repeat this pattern on the leaf area. If you look here, it's supposed to look like this, 4 leaves. And what I have done is managed to do the 4-leaf pattern and then repeat it all the way down here. But it's intricate lace work. It is a woolly wool. And what I'm going to do is rip back and show you how to pick up lace work, because that's one of the more technical ways of doing it. The nice thing about it is it's actually not any harder than ripping back any other kind of work, because in this case the strategy is going to be to rip back to a certain point in here somewhere, and then pick up stitches and then tink back, and that will allow you to actually continue the lace work without worrying about the fact that you've dropped stitches. So let's get started. Zooming back out again, I've got, I'm going to be pulling it off of these circular knitting needles and putting them onto my trusty 9-inch circulars, just because it makes it easier. Plus it comes in the smaller sizes and I don't have to fuss with a bunch of stuff. I've got a stitch marker here that shows me approximately where I'm going back to, but it's not written in stone. I don't need to mark any of these stitch markers because they are kind of a repeat of a pattern, to show me generally where I should be seeing repeats. But as you can see, it changes as it goes up, so I don't need to mark where those are. And then I've got these stitch markers over here that shows me the edge work. It's pretty obvious where that is, so I'm not worrying about those. So without further ado, I'm just going to pull it off the needles. The nice thing about this is it was all knit flat. I just don't want to lose any stitch markers, so I'm going to move these up. It's all knit flat, so I don't have to worry about where's the beginning of the round or anything like that. Lace work is difficult. If you've got, it's not an irregular pattern, it just, while you're knitting it, it makes it hard to figure out exactly where you're supposed to be in the pattern. And until you look back and look at things, you don't always see the pattern right away, which is part of the reason why I miss the fact that I managed to repeat the leaf structure in the leaf structure. I was looking at it this afternoon, and I said a few curse words at the time because I thought, oh, I got past the hard part on this, and it's just cruising from here. And then I just looked at it in complete disbelief, realizing that I had just knit this whole section and screwed it up royally, to the point where I just couldn't in good conscience leave it, because there is another half of this that's already knit, and it would be very obvious that there's something wrong with the pattern. So I'm going to start ripping out my stitches. And as before, here's my, get these circular needles out of the way. Here's my yarn, and I'm just going to wrap it around the ball of yarn as I go along so that I don't get everything tangled up. This is 100% wool Cloudborne. No real point of putting it up because they don't sell this wool anymore. It was a craftsy item that you used to be able to get like on yarn.com or Low Crafts, and the last I checked, most of that's all sold out. I know because I bought quite a bit of their sock yarn to play around with. So I'm going to keep ripping back, but I'm gonna, instead of watching me do this for the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna pause and we'll come back. Thanks. And just so you know, I'm doing this all on camera, still ripping back. It's a lot of yarn. I could just shoot myself right now for not paying closer attention when I did it. I can't even account for how I managed to do that. So we'll be back. Almost there. There's where my marker is. Just wrapping more yarn. Again, make sure you wrap your yarn as you go. Otherwise you end up with a big wadded mess. Kind of looks like that. I've had to detangle quite a bit of mess when I've had this, and believe it or not, it happens just as much with something like a cotton yarn as it does with a kind of a sticky wool like this. And ripping back some more. We'll be back. All right, I've ripped back, and I want to pick up with my 9-inch circulars. I like to use the 9-inch circulars because they're lightweight, they're small diameter needles, and I can pick up a certain number of stitches without tugging too much on this fabric to keep the stitches as steady as possible. So I like to fill these about 3/4 of the way, 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through, so I don't start losing stitches. And then I use another marker or set of needles. So I'm just going to start picking up stitches, and I'm not paying attention to whether something is on the right side of the leg or not, because it's not going to matter, because we're going to tink back on the purl side, and I know that I'm going to be tinking back on the purl side because this is the side that I would start tinking back my purl. It goes reverse, and so this would have been the end of the purl row, having the yarn show up on this side, and so tinking back would go this way. All right, so I'm just going to grab stitches, and the reason why I want to go back to the purl side is I don't want to tink back on a knit row, because I've got all these specialty stitches. I've got knit 2 togethers, I've got knit 4 togethers, I've got passover stitches, and it makes it more difficult. Is it a problem to do it that way? No. You can do that. And let me just show you this stitch right here. I've got a yarn over, I've got a pattern of yarn overs, and I've got what looks like a yarn over right here. And so I'm going to grab this stitch right here. It's not obvious, this opening, and I'm going to grab it. See if I can get it to, I need to turn off this autofocus. I'm going to grab it so that I get it when I tink back. If I weren't to grab it, it would be very obvious as I tink back, because this would be the live yarn, and we would get it then. But we're going to go ahead and grab it now. Will my yarn run because I don't grab that? No. It will run because of something like this, but because this is a yarn over, it's creating a stitch where there wasn't one before. And so missing the stitch on coming from this direction is not as bad as missing a live stitch. Okay, we're going to just keep grabbing. I'm going to zoom back out again. I'm having to remember to zoom out as I'm doing this complex lace work. So again, this is not the easiest thing to do. I really recommend doing lifelines, but I want you guys to feel confident that you can do it. and not be intimidated by it, because lace work, while intricate, is very fun to do, and I, I don't mind ripping back even on lace work. All right, so I just pulled some stitches off the needle because I've hit about 3/4 full. I know this because I like to keep everything close to just on the red, and gives me plenty of tails on these. So I'm going to grab another needle, and start picking up more stitches. And see how this isn't pulling on the stitches at all with these needles. We're just trying to maintain as much of a loose pull on the fabric as we can, so that we can just get the live stitches on, and then we can start yanking away on stuff and figuring out where things have gone wrong. The key is to grab as many live stitches as you can, and then once you're feeling secure with everything, start counting, and then tinking back, which tinking takes longer than ripping, obviously, but gives you more control. So it's a control versus speed issue with this. So the tinking back gives me the finer control to make sure I've got all of my correct live stitches and lace work. And then the ripping back piece gets me down those couple of inches I had to come down to fix my mistake. All right. So I think we're just about there again. Yep. And then we're going to pick up one more set of needles and grab these last set of stitches here. Again, there's another yarn over. I'm just going to grab what I think is the stitch, because it'll come out when we tink back. Okay, almost there. Oops. And the last 3 stitches. There we go. All right. Affirming I've got everything still on the stitches. Works out great. If I needed to, I would have grabbed more of my my 9-inch circulars. If we'd ended up at a wider part of the pattern, then it would definitely take you more. Now, what I will say is, if you're, on the wide end of like a triangular shawl or a pie shawl, number 1, make sure you put lifelines in. But number 2, this solution won't work as well. I would recommend then using a large diameter or long length of interchangeable needle with a small diameter needle. In that case, you could go with one of the, these are Chiaogu, so you could go with one of the minis. So you have a lightweight cord with a small diameter needle, because minimizing that weight is key to not pulling on this fabric too hard and unraveling things further. Okay, so I've got everything onto my 9-inch circulars. I'm now going to transfer everything over to my bigger diameter needle so that I can start tinking things back. And so I'm going to pause here with filming, because you don't need to see me pick these up again. And we'll meet back once I've got these all on the needles here. All right, I've got all my stitches back on my larger needles, and now we're going to tink back, which means I've got to move everything back over to this side and flip over. And so just not cooperating today. All right. So we're going to start tinking back on these stitches, and my first stitch is not a live stitch, so I'm just going to slip it. And I know this isn't a live stitch because my live yarn is not attached to that stitch. You can see it right through here. So my yarn is actually on this needle right here, or this stitch right here, and not on this stitch. So I'm slipping, and then I'm going to pick up the purl stitch. And remember, things may be twisted on here, but the stitch below is not. Oh, it looks like I have managed to catch some of the live yarn with the stitch itself. So let's try and straighten that out a little bit. Ah, there we go. It just came loose. So that stitch as well was not on the live stitch. I just slipped it. I had caught some of the live yarn in the needles when I was picking everything up. So I've got my live yarn finally. And this side I know is knit through here. So I'm just picking up, and now I'm purling. So I've got 3 purl stitches through here now, and then I pick up the yarn over because that's where my live stitch is. I'm being really bad about centering this. Pick up my purl stitch and then just grab that purl each time to tink back. And that's why I like ripping back until I'm on the purl side, because all of this should just be purl stitches I'm grabbing, not any fancy yarn overs or anything like that. And that way I know that I've got a clean set of stitches that I think should all be live, and I don't need to tink back again. I may have to, if I find that I had runs, either fix the runs or tink back more rows until I'm confident my rows are clean. So I'm just going to keep purling back, and I'll turn on the video again if I find another issue that I want to show you on. Okay? All right. I got a few stitches in, and I discovered this area right here. If I tink back this purl stitch, all of a sudden I've got a yarn over that didn't have a knit, and also it's twisted. So I can just untwist the knit stitch, the yarn over this way. And I'm pretty sure it's a yarn over because I'm seeing the pattern go through with a bunch of yarn overs before that. We'll confirm on the other side when we count all of the stitches compared to the rows, check where the yarn overs are. That's why this makes it a lot easier on lace work. It's harder than if you had just put in a lifeline. Again, I didn't put one in, and I could not live with the result of what my mistake was. So I am ripping back, and I wanted to show you guys that, yeah, you can rip back without a lifeline. It just takes a little extra work, okay? I'm going to continue tinking back, and we'll rejoin if we find another unique problem. Thanks. Okay, we're approaching the last few stitches, tinking back. And no other real problems, which is good news. I found a couple of yarn overs that didn't have the corresponding purl through it, but you saw how to fix those already. I'm on my last 3 stitches, which were knit stitches. I'm turning the yarn back over to the other side, pulling it through, just grabbing that bottom loop, and the last stitch on the purl side is always slipped as if to knit. So we just flip this back over, And I actually think it looks pretty good, but the most accurate way to tell if you are back in business and able to go on is to figure out what row you're on and count your stitches compared to the pattern, especially on lace, because you could be missing yarn overs, and then it would require more investigation. The nice thing about this particular pattern, and let me scroll in or zoom in, is on the border edge there are yarn overs, and they're created every other row. And the pattern itself shows these yarn overs and counts how many rows. So it's really easy for me to figure out which row I'm on, because each hole essentially represents 2 rows. So I've got stitch markers in here that show me every, I think it's 20, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so this is 10 yarn overs, which means 20 rows. So I just line up where my my last of my yarn overs are. So I've got 20, 40, 60, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, because I haven't finished this yarn over. And I check row 69, and then I count my number of stitches to compare. Let's zoom back out. I forgot I had scrolled in so far. So, so then I count my number of stitches that I have on my needles and compare. If the numbers don't match up, then you need to go through and follow the last row of 69 to figure out where you've missed a stitch. I'm not going to get into it in this video. I can get into it in other videos, but there are also other lace work fixes videos. The Arnell Culliford technique links or videos have, I believe, a series on fixing lace work, which are very good. In fact, that's how I learned. So I'll put a link in the bottom to show you where to find those videos. But that would be my recommendation. The other part is you could just tink back another row. You're going to be tinking through your knit lace work, which is a little more difficult, but then you can check your row, check your number count at that point, and then if it's still not working, then figure out where it is. Because the other part to all of this is if you haven't done your counting along, you may have another issue somewhere along the way. So it won't always be because you dropped a stitch when you ripped. It could be an existing problem, and then you decide whether you want to just live with it or not. Most of the time, though, it's very obvious when you're doing lace work that you've had an error along the way, because suddenly the next row of stitches don't line up. So that, to me, is going to be less common when you're ripping back, that you've skipped a stitch somewhere, as opposed to that you've dropped a ripped stitch somewhere. So that's all I've got to show today. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and leave any comments that you have down below. I'm always looking for suggestions and also feedback on how these, if you like these videos, or if there's a suggestion on how I can improve things. Thank you very much, and happy knitting.